And we're rolling in 3, 2, 1. We're rolling. And we're live, ladies and gentlemen. And we have a real meeting of the minds tonight. Some guy I've really admired from afar for a while. And I noticed on his podcast that he mentioned that if you bother him enough on the internet, he'll have you on his show. So I figured that maybe that could work the other way around. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest tonight, Maxwell Cody, meme king, and internet ideologue, I think would be a fair way to describe you. How you doing, pal?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
So one of the things that we've chatted about, I don't know. One of the things that I really identified when I first, we're not gonna play metal subgenre with politics. So we're not gonna get into like specifics about like how we differ, I guess, as politically. But one of the things I noticed that you said, I don't know if it was on your show or online or something, you said you were politically activated around the Occupy thing.
That was definitely when I was young.
Yeah,
when I was younger. I was definitely like very vehemently left-wing in my teen years / early 20s before I became kind of disillusioned with leftist politics. But you said internet ideologue. I consider myself more of an ideologue or ideology connoisseur.
Oh, okay, yeah. Nice. A bit of a sommelier, if you will.
Yes, an ideology sommelier.
But it's funny because I don't know if I've said this on the show either, but I kind of was more, I was like, when I was a kid, I was like you, I was like, oh yeah, fuck well, I guess I am still kind of fuck the man, but right. I was a very much like fuck capitalism, man. And then it's funny, I when Occupy did happen, it is kind of what I politically activated, but it turned me into like a Ron Paulsberg.
Mm-hmm. I had a libertarian phase myself, because I was so angry actually in 2006 about the Democratic Party not doing enough to stop George Bush and stop the war in Iraq and stop the Patriot Act, that I actually supported Ron Paul. Right. Not because I was like the most vehement libertarian, but just because I thought if the left won't do it, these people on the right might do it.
Right. So yeah, that's just so interesting that like we're like vaguely the same age. I don't know your exact age or anything, but like, yeah, we seem to be in the same age bracket. And it's so funny that like, really, it's so funny, especially now, like when you see kids people get older and like get into politics now, because it's everywhere. I mean, you can't escape it, obviously, at this point, but it's there's something to that last wave of that 2008 thing that happened, you know what I mean, where like so many people got fucking woke up around then. And
I think people got broke pilled. I think the financial collapse broke pilled right, a lot of people.
That's true.
Because I grew up pretty poor, but then by the 2000s, actually, my family was starting to be like properly middle class. Mm-hmm. And we got to be that for a couple of years, and then it all went away. So I sometimes refer to myself as a millennial poster boy, because that a massive amount of disappointment at that young age. I think that like I said, I think that was my broke pill, and I think a lot of other people had their own versions of getting broke pill.
In a way, yeah. When I graduated high school, it was the year of the financial crisis. So I was like, fuck.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, then I saw Peter Schiff online, and I was like, I have it all figured out. But anyway, that's just a quick little introduction. So it's really nice to have you tonight. And we wanted to talk about, so we are a history podcast, as the name implies, despite the misleading Homos moniker. Right. But you're right. There is a homo on the show.
I think it was D.H. Lawrence who said that the more you like history, the more big homo you are.
Yeah. Well,
I believe that's the quote, right?
It might have been him, but it might have been Abraham Lincoln.
That was definitely Lincoln who said that.
Yeah. But anyway, so one of the things that that we wanted to talk about, because we have like endless takes about World War One, but you sort of pitched. We kind of came together on a pitch of an idea so we could talk about some of our theories around, you know, World War One, its implications, and you know what would have happened if it didn't.
So yeah, so people always say, I'm sure whenever you hear alternate history, it's always, you know, some version of what if the Nazis won, and
Right.
or if I had a time machine, I would kill baby Hitler.
Right.
And I've always thought, why would you waste your time on Hitler and fuck over everyone who died in World War One? Why not go back and save Franz Ferdinand and see what would happen? So that's kind of like my favorite alternate history theory.
Another thing about the
most I'm thinking about.
The Hitler thing is like, it's very much like a fetishy thing for both left-wing kind of angled people and right. Because, you know, there's that whole like, you know, like, first of all, you get LARPy Nazi guys who are just like, yeah, if Hitler won, like, then on one hand, and then the other hand, you also have people who, you know, that kind of, I remember like specifically after you read about this, there's like after World War II, there was a bunch of like, fetish porn, like erotica written about like cruel Nazi S&M stuff, and like its primary audience was Jews.
I definitely know a lot about like fetish magazine. Well, I know a whole bunch about fetish magazines, but I know that fetish magazines
Me too, friend.
In like the 50s and 60s often would have like Nazi or even like Japanese Axis prisoner themes. Mm-hmm. I've never heard anything about it being particularly
maybe we go to different forums, but but yeah, no. So I have heard that though, and I think I read something on Wikipedia, which is you know normally approved. Gospel. So it's it's obviously been fact checked and debunked. So
it is like we've been sort of wondering aloud about this. I think I brought it up a couple of weeks ago of that. What, as you were saying, everyone kind of fetishizes World War II and says, oh, and one of the standard takes is, if only the United States hadn't got involved in World War II, how much better could things have been? Certainly in sort of right-wing libertarian circles, a lot of people say that.
But wait, hadn't gotten involved in World War II, or hadn't gotten involved in World War One?
In World War II, but like I was thinking, well, the real problem was Great Britain getting involved in World War One.
Yeah.
That really had no benefit to Great Britain, really, of getting involved.
Well, so
it goes back to the Boer War before that, which is another one of our pet topics.
I think I heard you guys talking about a little bit.
I'm glad you got a primer, because the audience is extremely tired of hearing about Cecil fucking Rhodes.
Well, we'll skip the Rhodes for a second. The take I always hear with regards to World War One, though, is usually the isolationist, libertarian, paleocon types. They say it was World War One and goddamn Wilson who, you know, duped us into this war over submarines, and that started this whole America World Police thing, and that the League of Nations became the prototype for the UN, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I often hear at least from the conservatives, the World War One was bad, we should have just let Europe sort itself out line. The only people I ever hear talk about America shouldn't have gotten involved in World War II are usually people who are actually crypto-fascists.
Yeah, really? Well, that's interesting. I've definitely heard it in more mainstream sort of libertarian, just strict, like, I guess, you know, like, I know that your red flags are going to fly, but like, you know, the Lou Rockwell kind of Mises Institute kind of crew of libertarianism. But I don't think it's that crazy of a take, at least considering, you know, what it resulted in all that too. But and also just the fact that like, I think another thing that has to do with another thing that's important to note is that, like, I remember seeing this was like a leftist take, was that like in France after World War II, like a poll of people were all pretty in much agreement that the Soviet Union were the ones who were the most responsible for ending the Nazi occupation, and they, through years and years of propaganda, mostly I'm going to guess CIA led, in 1990s, but it had just completely flipped over to being completely worshiping of the United States response.
I'm sorry, in France?
In France, this was a poll taken in like 1949. And they asked the people there who they thought was most responsible for liberating them from the Nazis, and it was the Soviet Union.
I mean,
and then
it's just like, okay, but who actually landed in France and retook France? It was the U.S. and Britain. So
right, yeah,
it's like that would be who would be most responsible. And then what's funny to me is if the U.S. hadn't gotten involved, then France would have probably just ended up being occupied by the Soviet Union.
Right. No, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. No, but I'm saying like through years of like, propaganda fed to them through the fucking American, pro-America world police, like I said before. It was America who saved you, frogs.
France does have a healthy distaste for America, though.
That they're resentful is what you're saying? They're like spite voting for the Soviet Union in these polls?
Perhaps. I don't know.
It seems like a very French thing to do, actually.
Yeah, it does. I think the French would say anything just to not say they like America.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
But when Merkel rolls her tanks in, you guys are on your own this time.
Yeah. That's true. But anyway, so one of the things you brought up that I thought was interesting was the way that you described the different, specifically that the idea that instead of there being the result, hang on, so just kind of lay me out a little bit the way where you got where you were for your alternate history and the two different paths it could take. Usually
the just general boilerplate little historical footnote that you get about World War I is that there was a bunch of entangled alliances. Europe was a giant tinderbox.
Right.
It was just inevitable that somebody was gonna wound somebody. Somebody was going to defend somebody, and it was going to start this massive conflict. And what I would compare that to is that anyone. If the U.S. and the Soviet Union had ever actually gone to war, if there'd been a nuclear World War III, some catastrophic conflict, whoever survived that would have seen it as inevitable. Anybody looking back, assuming some civilization survived, would look back and say that was just inevitable. It was only a matter of time. Both of these sides had all these nuclear stockpiles. If it wasn't the Cuban Missile Crisis that started it off, it would have been something else.
Yeah, a post hoc justification.
Right. And so I just think that if you look at in the same way that you can say, well, there was all of these interconnecting alliances that are inevitably going to cause a world war, you could just as easily say, actually, they just got extremely unlucky. Had any one of these little links in the chain not been there, World War I, as we know it, could have been avoided. So, had France not agreed to a protection pact with Russia, if Germany had somehow talked them out of it, had Russia not declared itself protector of the Serbs, had England not vowed to defend Belgian neutrality, had Germany not issued a blank check to Austro-Hungary, had the Ottomans not decided that Germany was the people that they wanted to throw their hats in with, so on and so forth. Maybe most notoriously, Franz Ferdinand had several chances to escape that day, the day that he was assassinated. He chose not to. I don't know, maybe if his wife had nagged him just a little bit more, it would have changed the whole
don't take that angle.
Misogynist.
Real crime against humanity.
No, it is, and this has kind of recently become public knowledge, but there was, I believe, the same guy who ended up plugging Franz Ferdinand. He had made an earlier attempt that day on his life, and he failed, and then later on in the day, and then he just so happened to see him and they were stopped completely unguarded. And if that hadn't happened, like if there had been one more guy there to tackle him, it was like, I think it was like a revolver shot. It's not like he went in there with, fucking, full tactical gear or something.
He also just got very lucky and got 2 critical hits on Franz Ferdinand and his wife.
Right.
So it's just also, I don't know, I can't remember the assassin's name now. Damn, but
Gavrilo Princip.
Yes, Princip. I don't know if Princip actually was much of a marksman or if he just got really lucky, but in anything that if anything had gone slightly different that day in particular, maybe that crisis wouldn't have turned into World War One.
As I understand it, there was a large amount of brinksmanship on the behalf of the Kaiser. In terms of there was like a lot of personal beef between, because as you know, like all these people, all these heads of crowns of Europe were all related, and as a result, like I think the now contemporary historians kind of agree that the Kaiser Wilhelm kind of felt like the black sheep, and wanted like some sort of familial respect from his cousins or whatever, and that's kind of what led to the fact that it spilled out over an entire continent as well. So I mean, if say I don't know, what if he got a little more pussy?
Yeah, or if he got the brown egg at breakfast at King George's house.
Yeah.
Or even it's like even if like if you take any one of these little chain links out, it's not that you get a completely peaceful Europe, it's that you can at least avoid World War One. So you maybe you have like a little
catastrophic combination of all these forces. Yeah.
So maybe France doesn't have an alliance with Russia, so then Germany and Austro-Hungary can go into the Balkans and muck them up a little bit. And then after maybe a year of fighting, they come to some new terms with Russia or something like that. So there's still a war, but it doesn't turn into the catastrophe that it did.
Right.
You can ultimately look at the whole sort of World War One, World War Two arc as basically a very ugly way of reforming Europe into what it is now, which is basically a corporatist sort of continental empire, with the Tower of Babel thrown in, because there's no real European identity, but there is like a European administration, and I think that's what both those wars were trying to impose, that, and it's just sort of been imposed peacefully since the war.
Well, this is a little bit of a tangent. I see people who are mad about Brexit all the time online who like to talk about a European identity.
Yeah, there's no such thing.
And well, they would say that's exactly what a British person would say.
Yeah.
He's a Yorkshireman. They
don't even share an alphabet, the states of the European Union.
Right.
Much less a language, much less a culture, much less a demos. There's no pan-European political parties.
You don't think that Brussels will mandate Esperanto soon, or
they may already have done.
I know some guys who really wanted to, but what's it called? So one other thing I wanted to talk about specifically about World War One, and I know like plenty of people have talked about World War One, and it is correctly viewed as like one of the most catastrophic events of modern of all time, possibly at least in the European milieu. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about, specifically bring up, was Carol Quigley, and I believe he cannibalized it a lot for Tragedy and Hope, but I believe it was in his earlier work, like The Evolution of the Civilizations. And one of the things he talks about is like the types of weapons used in war, as compared to what kind of social organization they have. And the fact of the matter was, during the 1800s, or up until the late 1800s, most of the wars were armed citizenry, kind of marshaled into nation states. And because at that time, the most efficient weapon you could have was a rifle, and every guy could get reasonably good with using a rifle. And then it'd be kind of an even playing field, which is why, like, with some exceptions, obviously, in European versus European conflicts from the birth of the rifle all the way until World War I, most of the wars, the casualties were not that bad. I mean, with the notable exception of the U.S. Civil War, but that's kind of another conversation. But also, and that was also the birth of, because that's when the technology started. This is what Carol Quigley talks about, is that like once the weapons technology starts to outpace the way that the army is conducted, that's becomes a problem, because that's why you see such high casualties for World War I, is because they started introducing these new things like the machine gun, mustard gas, all this shit, and you're still fighting it with the same old tactics of just a bunch of guys with rifles.
Yeah, well,
what happens when you use Napoleonic tactics versus a wall of machine guns and heavy artillery, right?
The French started World War I wearing blue coats, didn't they? And
I always remember
braid and all that shit.
Well, so this is kind of what this would be my worst case scenario for avoiding World War I, and I call it the nuclear Balkan scenario. If you postpone the war, so to speak, if you don't let any of the crises of the early 20th century spiral out of control and turn into
a Herculean effort, by the way.
Yes, I'm jumping around in my time machine. I'm saving Franz Ferdinand. I'm saving him again. Yeah. I'm saving the prime minister. I'm talking to the king of Belgium and all kinds of shit. All right, but if you let the old royal dynasties of Europe last into the, let's say, mid 20th century, right, maybe what ends up happening is you just give them a lot of time to stock up weapons, and there's nobody who has any memories of any of these catastrophic conflicts,
right?
And what they actually cost. So you would end up with all kinds of wacky things. You would end up with maybe people doing carpet bombing with mustard gas. You'd end up with people shooting nukes out of cannons. You'd end up with all of these wacky scenarios when you have these
some real Warhammer shit.
Entrenched. Right, exactly. It would turn into some real Warhammer shit.
Yeah,
all the stuff that Saddam Hussein would have done if we hadn't invaded in 2003.
Well, actually, what's interesting is that
he was being facetious. It was kind of, it was, yeah.
When you look at this is something I always thought about the Iran-Iraq War, is that they were kind of fighting with World War I tactics, except they kind of had World War III technology.
Yeah, that's true.
It's the only war where you had helicopter versus helicopter fights. They were like, but they were still doing like trench warfare and gas, but they still had like heavy machine guns and jet fighters and shit. It's such a weird war to read about from a American/European perspective, because it's like you guys are fighting like it's 1914, but you got all the late 20th century toys.
Yeah, we need to look into that. That's a good idea.
Dude, babies and incubators.
No, that was 1990. That was 91.
I know.
Yeah. But I can remember the news coverage of that being on TV when I was a kid.
Me too. Operation Shock and Awe.
No.
Which one are we talking about?
Iran-Iraq War.
Oh my God. Yeah. My bad. Yeah, we should do an episode of that.
Yeah. Because I don't really know anything about it other than having watched the news at the time.
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't interested. So.
But anyway, yeah. So so the idea would be is that with no cultural consciousness of the heart. I mean, they called it the fucking Great War. They thought it was going to be the war to end all wars, and that does something to the psyche of people. Not to mention, another thing is just the veterans and stuff coming back. Just complete. This is the first time that like people came back. This is where the word basket case came from. People weren't fucked up by war like this before, and a lot of times, I mean, this was almost another thing to say is that this was really the first time Look at the beginning of the war, it was the same as prior, where you were fighting for your country. It was valiant. You were going to die, perhaps, and then by the end, it was very clearly not just a quagmire, but like, you know, ideologically bankrupt by all but the most high-minded Wilsonian people.
So something that really stuck out to me, I was watching They Shall Not Perish, the World War I documentary recently.
I gotta check that out.
It's really, really good. But one thing that really shocked me, I guess, was they talk about, you know, what it was like on the Western Front for the British soldiers when it was announced that the war was over, and nobody celebrated or clapped or cheered or anything. They all just stood there like dumbfounded.
Yeah.
Everyone was just completely quiet. Everyone just sulked off of the field. They just couldn't. He said that they couldn't believe that they could stand up without being shot.
Yeah. We just on Christmas, we were just talking about the Christmas truce, 1914, which was really, I think, was very powerful to the people fighting the war, and to, you know, to show that like really we're not very different than those guys. Like, as much as, you know, the people that we went here for say, you know, and then, the fact of the matter was there was places all along France where they were like, fuck this, we're not fighting for more days. And the only way that they were able to get them to start fighting again was for both sides, non-commissioned officers to demand that artillery go to the other side to get the fighting just popping off again. So, yeah.
I mean, it's like there's the popular conception of the sort of, how in the after 9/11 there was a lot of young sort of college age kids signed up to go and join. It was like that patriotic zeal, and there was a lot of that. The sort of legend
Pat Tillman
of the zeal of the young boys from England who wanted to join up and go and fight in France at the beginning of the First World War, and I believe that wore off pretty quick. But there's like the British Army wasn't as big as you would think it would have been for the global superpower of the age, and all the my grandfather included, like the professional soldiery were all scattered around all over the world, and my granddad had been on a posting in South Africa for God knows how long, year or two or whatever, and they put him on a boat and took him straight to fucking Bordeaux, and he went and had to fight in the trenches in France until he couldn't take it anymore, and then he got invalided out. It's like so I think a lot there's I think everybody ends up as depressed as the fucking people who'd already been doing it for years. It's just a fucking meat grinder for the underclass, and it's kind of, I can see resonance of it now. I've got 3 grown-up kids who are all in the forces now because they're not particularly, the bright kids, not academically inclined necessarily. They've all ended up in the forces because it's the only way they can make a living really now in this state that we're at now. It
becomes a social safety net.
Another time's a flat circle, by the way, where you mentioned after 9/11 people getting all rah-rah up to go join the military. I just briefly brought up that Pat Tillman guy, if you recall that guy, Maxwell. He would just been drafted to be the starting quarterback for I don't remember what team. And he said, fuck this, fuck the NFL, fuck all this money.
Go fight in Afghanistan.
Fight in Afghanistan and then get fragged. Because
but the official story was that he died charging up the hill to fight the Taliban.
Right.
And then a couple of years later, we found out.
Yeah, it turned out that he was not happy to be over there because he realized what they were doing.
Yeah.
And I some people made some decisions that if that guy came back and started running his fucking mouth about how we're protecting fucking poppy fields, he better not. So he's KIA, I guess. But anyway, so as far as the nuclear Balkans thing, so where were we with that? I'm very interested in this stuff.
The basic idea is if you postpone the conflicts of the early 20th century, it could come back and haunt us, because then it means that you just have more deeply inbred royals who have bigger and better toys
and weird chins.
And no one in the culture has any, no one in living memory can remember any really big war. The last big war in Europe, I guess, would be, I don't know, Napoleon era, or maybe 1848 or something. And then the last big war in America would have been the Civil War. So if there's no wars between the like mid 19th century all the way to the mid 20th century,
it's the Boer War.
Well, okay.
Well, yeah, that's a long way away then.
if the Boer War is the worst war that anyone can remember,
maybe bad, though.
Maybe it ends up being worse. Maybe when you finally do get the World War I scenario, it's like it actually ends the world.
There is an interesting connection, though, between the Boer War and World War I, was that the Boers invented trench warfare, and the German military, what's it called, advisors.
The Wehrmacht?
Well, they were down there because they were at, isn't Mozambique German, William?
It was Portuguese, but I think there's a lot. I'm not quite sure about the colonial status of a lot of these places over the years. I think it changed around a fair bit from time to time, but there was a lot of Germans in that area of Mozambique.
Yeah, and a lot of them ended up being the officers
maybe.
of the First World War on the German side, and they observed the Boers basically inventing a whole subgenre of war.
Yeah. Well, I think I think soldiers would dig in before, but the Boers had ideas about how to build trenches and where to build them, which were new, and that caught on. It was observed by the Germans, and they thought, "Oh, yeah, this is a good idea."
If you lived in the trench,
yeah.
So that's the worst case scenario. What would be the best case scenario?
The best case scenario. This is my extremely best possible of all worlds end of history scenario, which would be, in retrospect, it seems to me that the world wars are what ideologically polarized Europe, and then eventually would ideologically polarize the world. If World War I doesn't happen, you don't get the Bolsheviks in Russia.
Yeah.
You don't get the Bolsheviks in Russia. You do not get fascism in Italy and Germany.
No.
I'm strongly of the opinion that fascism is a strictly reactionary thing. It could never just pop up on its own. It's also, I think fascism also was appealing to people because of the loss of the old royalty and of the old sovereigns and stuff like that. I think that it's obvious to me that Mussolini and Hitler, they're channeling that that image of the
strong leader,
emperor, the strong leader, the strong man. So without that, you just get a much less ideological world. Maybe all of these royal families start to intermarry more and more as time goes on. It just becomes less and less likely that they want to fight with each other. Maybe it becomes more like the world becomes more about like 19th century style positivism, where it's like we just have to keep progressing and building more railroads and more technology. We just have to keep becoming more and more economically powerful. And maybe you just end up with a world history that is, by our standards, just slowed way, way down.
Well, my sort of take on it was that even if what ended up being World War I did happen, if Great Britain hadn't got involved, it wouldn't have been a world war.
Right.
And basically, the downside of Germany consolidating Europe, because I mean Germany could have marched through Europe and consolidated it maybe, and that probably wouldn't have been all that bad. Like you said, they probably would have.
It was not an ideological.
It's like nothing really changed after the Boer War, for instance. It's just like we've got to put the authority of the British Empire on it, and then pretty much left them alone once they'd won it. And Germany might well have done that. Might well have sort of just been the EU, and as it were. And the only downside for Britain would be that all the European empires would have been consolidated into one rival empire, almost.
Well, but I always joke what Germany couldn't do in 2 world wars it did with the EU.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, right. It just becomes right. So in maybe in this liberal monarchism, you just get a monarchistic EU
Yeah,
100 years earlier or something.
I mean, you get they call it Rhineland capitalism is the polite way of putting it, or that's really what they call it in EU.
Oh, that is pretty fucking funny.
It's called Rhineland capitalism, or in England they call it corporatism, but it's economic fascism is the European system, and well, it's the world system now, really.
Yeah.
Everybody's got it, so it's really as if we've almost ended up where it's strongly possible it would have ended up in your scenario anyway, but without the royalty, and we've had 2 fucking awful world wars over it. And plus a lot of these sort of Middle Eastern skirmishes, maybe they wouldn't have happened either.
Right. So if the Ottoman Empire stays, you don't
old
get,
sick man of Europe.
You don't get a lot of this stuff, right?
Yeah, and also, I mean, like it bears repeating that the birth of Wahhabism, which is responsible for all of, the very, very spooky Muslim terrorism you hear about, it was literally created by an act of parliament by installing those guys as the head of what is now called Saudi Arabia. It was a very deliberate decision to put one of the most radical Sunni factions in charge of that area, because they I believe the British imperialists thought they could kind of control them because they thought they were kind of fanatical or whatever.
Well, it's like Lawrence of Arabia myth of Cecil Rhodes thought that the British were the sort of the bee's knees, and could basically, there was this attitude that we could civilize and manipulate any of these brown people into acting like not quite like a white man, but almost like a white man sort of thing. And that was like, I think that it's that sort of hubris and arrogance that they thought, yeah, we can, if we put our chaps in charge, we know how to talk to them, it'll be all right, we can.
Yeah. And to your point, William, about the British involvement in World War I, I mean, I know I don't need to say this to you, but we're very firmly of the belief that Milner's Kindergarten was, kind of really instrumental in gaining, popular support and, material support within British Parliament in order to get the English into the conflict.
Yeah, because it really was that sort of imperial interest of preventing a rival European empire from emerging,
right,
to rival the British Empire.
And then the opportunity as an imperialist, by the way, to be like, well, then when we win this, chaps, we'll be able to mix around the map and do what we want to do. So yeah.
Well, see, this is what would be funny though, is that then if I went back in time to stop World War I, all I would have to do is show the British government the future.
Rhodes.
Yeah.
Well, okay, maybe kill Cecil Rhodes, but I'm saying you could just show the people in the British government that in the future Germany's just going to rule the continent anyway. You'll fight 2 huge wars to stop German hegemony, just to end up with it anyway.
But yeah,
and game theory, that very much is definitely not.
I think I think I'd have to talk to you about your assumptions on that the British government had the interests of Britain at heart.
Oh, I'm assuming that they're all good, honest chaps that just wanted to.
Good blokes in it.
Give them some lager.
Shit. So yeah, that's all very cool stuff, and it definitely it dovetails a lot of the stuff that you're saying here. It dovetails into some of our shit, and it's very fucking cool, man. But yeah. So we can talk about some other stuff. I did ask you as a little homework assignment to go back and maybe check out some of the political messaging in Studio Ghibli, specifically Hayao Miyazaki films. And we could talk a little about that, because William is a noob to this. He just watched his first 2 Miyazaki films.
When I was a little boy, my older brother showed me My Friend Totoro, and that 100% weed pilled me. So
right. Okay.
I go way back with My Friend Totoro, but also I don't think Miyazaki's ever made a film that I didn't at least really like.
Agreed.
Some of them that he's made, I thought, have been absolutely fantastic. Some of my favorite animated films. I actually think his best movie, though, is The Wind Rises, his last feature film, and I think his most personal.
I just watched that too. It is very good, and yeah, and that is one of the things you see as a theme throughout all of his movies. And again, it's kind of like one of those universal themes. Like I've known of the flight thing and the fascination with flight as a young kid and stuff. And also, he's got a really he's really interested in Japan and its role in the world and stuff. And yeah, I agree. I just rewatched it this weekend, and it is an excellent film. But
I find as you say, Scott, I've only watched 2 of the movies.
Yeah,
I watched them both with my 6-year-old daughter, and they're not short movies, and they don't really pander to the sort of in the sort of
gimmicks.
vulgar, that American and British children's entertainment do. I don't know if they are supposed to be children's entertainment, but she was thoroughly entertained by them. Like an hour and 45 minutes of sitting still, transfixed by these movies. Absolutely fantastic.
I know Miyazaki has commented that I don't know if he's ever actually explicitly said he wants to be the anti-Disney, but I know he said stuff along the lines of, I want my movies to be a little bit more complicated than what most of what Western children's films are. Well, because the villains usually are a little bit more than one-dimensional, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Well, it's what brought it up between Scott and I was I'd watched with my daughter. It must be some Disney subsidiary, because it's Snow White, which is a Disney property. But on Amazon Prime, there's a version of Snow White which is Chinese. It's made in China, and it's got a completely different kind of social structure to it. It's like Snow White is a peripheral character in it. The star character is a little girl whose father is a tailor, and they live in a cabin in the forest, and her father's gone missing and she doesn't know where he is. And she and her dog go looking for him, and they stumble across the 7 dwarves and Snow White, whose father is also dead, whose father and it's all about fathers and daughters, this one. It's like, which is not really a theme much in Western children's entertainment, is it? We kind of, I mean, it wasn't very good, but we enjoyed it. And then Scott put us on to Miyazaki.
I think his most child friendly movie, his most toddler targeted film is Ponyo. I think that's definitely the most like for.
I actually haven't seen that one, so I can't really comment explicitly on it. But I'm to understand it has a lot to do with some folklore, Japanese folklore.
It's some sea people, mer people mythology, but it's just the way it's animated. It looks like a children's story.
Yeah, big eyes. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I've seen the stills from it.
All the characters or most of the main characters are like really little kids, and it's much more. It's probably his most child friendly or aimed film. It's funny because some of his movies like Princess Mononoke are pretty dark and pretty violent, actually.
Yeah, I wouldn't show that one to your kid, Will.
Probably wait a couple years for that one.
I think I don't know what it is that makes it so compelling to the child, but I mean, it's undeniable. She's watched 2 full-length movies in 2 days back to back and not moved a muscle while she's watching it. And I think part of it must be the quality of the illustration.
That's one of his things he's known for.
But are those sets actually painted, or are they kind of superimposed on photographs, or what?
There's actually a lot of documentary footage shot at the Studio Ghibli facility. And by the way, Miyazaki is fucking base, dude. He fucking he just shits on his fucking employees for not, if it's like one hair is wrong, he'll like rip the shit up in their fucking face and say this is shit and exhale cigarette onto them. I believe he had one. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Please go on. Tell us more about the Terrors of Miyazaki.
I was gonna say I think he was in like a long-standing feud with his son over an argument they got in because he said that his son is now also an animator, by the way. But he was in response to asking his dad what he thought of his new movie, he said it was shit. Yeah. And you should be and they didn't talk for many years, I believe. And also another thing was he's got some really great quotes. Like, for instance, there's one that went very big on 4chan, as you can imagine, but anime was a mistake. Was one of his most well-known quotes. And also I haven't read it in a while, but he went on this pretty poignant rant on video about how much he despised Western animation, and he thought that the American audiences will eat any shit up, and all this stuff.
His other one, the other one where he was pretty based and probably earned the ire of most of Reddit, is he went on a rant against like hentai.
Oh, did he? I didn't see that one.
He said something about like, I keep seeing grown men looking at
he was talking shit
cartoon porn on the train, saying like this is like an embarrassment to our entire country. Like, how can there be adult men looking at this on trains?
Yeah. He said the lifestyle.
The guy turned it off and said, "Hey, I'm not done yet."
One of his other quotes specifically to that was he said the lifestyle of a hikikomori is disgusting to me, and they should be ashamed of themselves or something.
Unfortunately, a lot of them are all watching Miyazaki films. So
yeah, I know. Must have been such an ego blow.
It is the artwork is strikingly beautiful.
Yeah.
The real thing that appeals to me about it is the absolute sort of wholesomeness and straightforwardness of the stories. Now, I expect you're going to tell me about a load of symbolism.
Yes, I will, a little bit at least.
I'm not great at interpreting symbolism, but I don't feel bad about that, because I think if symbolism's going to actually be effective, you don't need to know that it's symbolism. You know
that's a great point. And that's one of the things I know that he is known for. Like, there are literally like fucking peer-reviewed theses written on the symbolisms of these movies. Like specifically in Totoro, he uses like a number of Jungian archetypes as far as like, really what the movie is about is a young girl who's becoming a woman, is forced into kind of a maternal role by the fact that her mother is absent. And because of that, and then in the movie really is about how she's reminded of her childhood, but also in the same time is ready to move on from childhood and become an adult. And like all of that, I mean, like that's such universal themes that you can find in almost any fucking, piece of literature that's targeted towards girls in the entire Western canon. Like, so just the fact that he was able to do that while combining different, magical elements that appeal to kids. So it appeals to you on like a subconscious level, as well as, like you said, in the visual aspect. And also it is just a fucking fun story.
And the child characters are so truly drawn. That they actually, like most in most Western.
Well, wait till you watch a couple more of them, because he reuses the faces of many of these characters. I don't
mean drawn as in with the pen. I mean drawn created. The characters, not the images. The characters themselves are so much like sort of really great kids, and like there's nothing better than great kids, is there? And whereas in English or American or whatever
Western
culture, in Western culture, kids aren't represented that way that they really are, for the most part. I mean, there's always newspapers fucking going on about how badly behaved kids are, but I don't see it. Most of them are great.
Some good friends of mine used to make fun of me because I said that I thought that Princess Mononoke is basically Anne Prim, It's because it's all about
it absolutely is, dude.
but in like a very like Japanese nationalist way. It's like Japan Prim, because it's all about the guns that they're using. Like, because Princess Mononoke is all about, you know, this new technology is being introduced to the serene natural world, and it's killing all of the gods and spirits of nature. The guns that they have in that movie are the replica guns from the, I can't remember, it was the Dutch or Portuguese guns that the Japanese copied and kept using for years after they kicked the Europeans out. But I was just like, that has to be deliberate. This is all about Japan was magical and awesome until all of this Western technology got dumped in here, and now it's ruined everything.
If I remember correctly, like the beginning of the film, the spirit of one of the boar spirit of the forest is like started attacking people, and it's unsafe to travel. And then when they are able to purge the evil spirit from it, it turns out it's like a mini ball from a rifle. And that is literally what tainted it and whatnot. And also it's got some interesting stuff about how and it really is about, it is Anprim, but it also in the same breath I can kind of see where his sort of message was that like humans should take a role in, you know, protecting, you know, this, you know, whatever this stuff is. But yeah, I agree with that. I also wanted to run this by you. I said that the film The Cat Returns is the femcel anthem. Because
she falls in love with a cat and he bails.
Well, no, the whole message of the film, or what I think the message of it is. Of course, I've watched it like 1,000 times. I'm a big cat guy, and listeners of the show will know that. But what's it called? Really, the message of the film is like you shouldn't base all. And it isn't just femcel; it's incel too. But just the idea that you shouldn't base all your self-worth on attention from, you know, potential mates or whatever. It's really about learning how to. One of them is a cat. It is, in fact. So maybe it's some kind of weird, bizarro, furry, fucking programming. There is anthropomorphic cats, but they're
femcells are known for collecting cats, aren't they?
It's true. It's true.
And you guys are positive femcells exist?
Well, it's one of those things. Like like I've seen. Well, no, I'm saying it's one of those things where like a guy who is hideous will go on an incel forum, post a picture of himself, and they'll say, "You're a fucking volcel." You know what I mean?
This is when I went on incel forums. What I was shocked by is the guys who seem to be the most self-flagellating on those forums seem to be the most normal, average-looking dudes you could imagine.
Yeah, it is bizarre.
And then the other guys, the guys who maybe it's like, okay, you do objectively have a really fucked up nose or something. It's like, that's not, you just need to start a band or something. Literally do anything. Beat people up, lift weights. Literally do anything and you'll become attractive. Women don't have that option.
Yeah. You could get arrested you could get convicted of being a serial killer or something. You'd be, and
women will still throw themselves at you. Yeah,
the ladies love murder boys. Yeah, all these murderers get. Everyone's met that one sketchy white girl who wrote letters to Charles Manson.
Yep.
Yeah,
that's true.
And then
also, it is. Another thing is what are the other movies that I want to talk about? Oh yeah, of course. Let's the most obvious politically messaged movie in the canon is Porco Rosso. Obviously, which I kind of always thought of as a very libertarian film, actually, and there's the big banner line of the film is "I'd rather be a pig than a fascist," and and he's kind of like fucking John McAfee, fucking rolling around getting pussy from fucking, and he's a literal pig
with a mustache.
He does have a mustache.
See, that always and Rosso always felt a little bit alternate World War I to me, because, or maybe like, I don't know, alternate interwar period, because it's like,
it is interwar, yeah.
What if the airplane, the prop airplane age had gone in a different direction where you could have air pirates and stuff like that?
Right. This is it's kind of like a diesel punk kind of setting.
Really appealed to me.
But this is an interesting point, actually, because only the two movies I've watched, the actual time setting of the movies is ambiguous at best, isn't it? Even in Totoro.
Totoro is specific. He had a specific time period in mind, which is the immediate time after World War II in Japan.
Yeah, I could get that, but with the other one I watched, which was what
Kiki's Delivery Service, that takes place in Europe, actually.
Yeah, it somehow takes place in Europe, and it's kind of, it looks like Austria, but it's got an ocean.
I think it is, yeah. Or it's like, because she flies around, not for nothing. So I mean, but
so that's fine. But like they're all driving around in these late 1940s cars, and there's a dirigible in it, and like biplanes and stuff, and then there's a kid wearing a hoodie, wearing like a skater punk outfit, and another kid who's dressed up like Tintin.
You're in a dreamy, magical 20th century, far away from the actual nightmare 20th century.
And besides, we all know
it makes it clear that it's like a different universe almost, and that's why it looks so. Like you can accept it looking so beautiful and raining every day.
Well, I mean, we all know that in the late 1950s they outlawed witchcraft, so it had to have been sometime before that.
Anyway, listeners, check out those movies.
They're fucking excellent, and they're. I never, the interesting thing is I'd never seen any of them. Oh no, that's not true. I'd seen Princess Mononoke a bunch of times when I was a kid. But I never explored any of them until I met my wife fucking 8 years ago. And I immediately, I probably was like, this is gay. I'm over anime. That's me in fucking 7th grade. But then I watch it. I'm like, fuck, like this is, I don't throw out compliments like this very often, but I gotta say, I think Miyazaki is probably the greatest living artist, at least in the medium of film. Fuck it.
Well, maybe.
Animation wise,
I'm a Philistine, one of these real assholes who's kind of
basically. Well, let's not talk too much about taste because it's just going to be William fucking saying that sucks. I don't like it because old man.
That's exactly it. But, I mean, even I can appreciate this, and I'm an absolute pig, so.
Oh, you'd really like Porco Rosso then.
That guy is absolutely your team.
Fuck. Is there any other ones I wanted to talk about? Yeah, what are you gonna say?
Have either of you ever seen Angel's Egg?
Angel's Egg? No, what is that?
Angel's Egg. Okay, if you're looking for like artsy fartsy, deep cut, hipster anime, I would definitely recommend Angel's Egg. It's not very long. I think it's only like an hour and a half. It's just a weird dream / nightmare. It's got kind of like biblical Gnostic themes. Maybe there's some alchemy stuff going on in there. It's probably one of the strangest and most unique films I've seen, and definitely maybe the strangest and most unique animated film I've ever seen. And it's considered kind of a lost classic now. I think you can even just find it on YouTube because no one cares about the copyright for this movie.
Interesting. Cool. I'll definitely be taking that recommendation. That's right up the fuck up my fucking alley. Anyway, so coming up on
Scott's died.
He came up on the hour. That hour really came up on him.
It did, didn't it?
Oh, I'm back. We're back, baby.
Okay.
We're back, baby. All right, it's fine. We're good now. I'll cut that out in the podcast version. Anyway, so it's been an hour. So thank you very much, Maxwell, for coming to the show. I appreciate it. Just to come and chat. And we'd love to have you back. Obviously, we don't have to have such a regimented topic next time. Maybe we'll have you in on a Wednesday, and maybe we'll even expose you to one of our insane comedian friends too. That might be fun.
All right. If you guys want to talk about Around Iraq next time, I'd be
that'd be fucking great.
I'd love to do the research on that. So
it's an underappreciated war.
Yeah, I mean, it was just sort of the news reporting of it at the time in the UK was basically, we don't know what the fuck this is about, but it's really bad. that was pretty much it.
So anyway, what would you like to plug for the ladies and gentlemen listening?
I'd like to plug myself, schizotopia.net. You can follow me on Instagram. You can check out the podcast on my website. I'm going to be much more active on YouTube. I'm Schizotopia on YouTube as well. I'm going to be putting out some video essays starting this month. So please hit that up.
Yeah, your show's really interesting. I listened to your intro to Bitcoin the other day and another episode. Really enjoyed them.
I'm glad to hear it. Thank you.
And also great follow on Instagram. He makes, it's like, how do you make them so fast, these memes?
The force is strong in my family.
Okay, fair enough. Anyway.
He was very well vaccinated.
Anyway, so for the audio episodes, www.historyhomos.com. You can follow us across social media at History Homos Pod. Check out our YouTube channel for full-length video episodes by searching History Homos, or follow the link in any of our bios. And you can follow me on Instagram at Scott Lizard Abrams, and at Twitch at twitch.tv/History Homos. William, anything you want to leave the ladies and gentlemen with?
I want a Totoro so I can sleep on its belly.
Later, homos.
Thanks.
All right, hang on. Let me just quickly stop recording the vid. And yes.